Hi, Sally. How's everyone doing today? Are we all good? Got a cup of tea? Hope so. I popped on a little early because I was a little bit late yesterday, so just want to make sure we're all good to go. Hi, Anna. Hope you're all well today. My cup for today, it's a bit backwards, but it says Dippy on it, which I've had this cup for probably about 25 years. Anyone who knows me knows I am a little bit mad, so a Dippy cup is absolutely perfect for it. Right, we'll wait a minute or two just to get to kind of 3 o'clock, and then we'll start off. I hope you're all doing really well today. Thank you all for turning up. It is official. I am famous. I've been on the BBC News for a whole 45 seconds. So there we go. Anyone who said I wouldn't amount to anything, I amounted to 45 seconds of something. So hurrah. Get there eventually. I hope you're doing really well. I had some lovely messages from people yesterday saying that they were kind of, a little bit lonely, a little bit struggling, but being on their own and working from home, or I know there's someone who got in touch to say she'd finished her university, was missing all her friends and everything. I hope you're here. If you're here, give us a little shout. So it's really nice that we're all kind of coming together and we've got our little community, which I hope is going to grow. And I'll be here every day at 3 o'clock while this madness is going on. Hi everybody. Hi Ben. Nice to see you all today. Right, well, it's 3 o'clock, so let's kind of get going, I think, maybe. So, you put your kettle on, fantastic, good. I hope, has everyone got some cups of tea? Oh, lovely. Got Bertha there as well. Hi, everybody. Now, what's really interesting, I had some messages from friends, from people I've not met out there in the kind of internet world, and it's really lovely that you're all kind of coming on board with this. It's my little Instagram folly, but I hope it'll be of help to people and just kind of feel like we're not out there all on our own. You were great on BBC News, thank you. Finally reaching my true calling. So I know that we've got everyone from, I don't know if Alex Mees is on yet, but his friend of mine, his little kids, 3 and 7, are watching, and I know that we've got someone's mum watching, who's in her 90s, so we are really kind of across the board today, which is great, so I'm really thrilled that you can all make it. So I thought we would start today right at the start with a cup of tea. I hope you've all got something there, because this is why we're all here. We are all here not for coronavirus, we're here for tea, and that's what it's all about. So I thought we'd do a little bit of history of tea today. And it's quite interesting because the history of tea is not as long as you might expect. You might kind of think that tea is the thing that we've been drinking since the dawn of time. It's actually not at all. Coffee was king for a long, long period. And tea is a bit of a newcomer to the block. I say newcomer, still fairly old, but coffee was king. And tea didn't really arrive until kind of the 1660s, really. Coffee was the thing that it was all about. It was about business, was revolving around coffee houses, and we'll cover coffee tomorrow, so I'll tell you a bit more about that. But the history of tea kind of links slightly into the history of colonialisation, which is not a pretty topic, and we're not going to start with that today because it's quite deep and quite complex and quite long and potentially quite controversial, so we'll leave that for a little bit down the way maybe. But the first tea kind of starts coming in the 1600s. There was, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to be super technological today. I'm going to try and show you some pictures. But tea was started being brought in by this lovely lady here, who's called Catherine of Braganza. And Catherine of Braganza was the wife of Charles II. So we're talking the 1660s here. And she kind of started to popularise tea and brought it in. And tea back in the day, I mean, you can tell from that picture, she's got a cup of tea in front of you, but it's full of Sauvignon Blanc. Nicely done. We might do a gin one day. But yeah, on so you can see from her dress, she is obviously quite aristocratic. Not just aristocratic, she's royal. You can tell she's got a little bit of money about her. So tea was something that was only really for the really rich people. And in fact, at one point in time, people used to keep their tea under lock and key. It was the 17th century version of stockpiling your toilet paper, which I think we can probably all appreciate at the minute. So yeah, she had loads of tea, and everyone would keep it under lock and key, and that's kind of how it would go. And in 1660, there was a chap called Samuel Pepys, who some of you might have heard of. He's particularly famous for having written a diary, which is fantastic because it means that we have on paper first-hand eyewitness accounts of what was going on in that period. And he actually said he went to a dinner, and then a fantastic quote I'm going to read you. He said, "Afterwards I did send for a cup of tea, of which I never drank before." So that was in 1660, and that's the first time that we kind of see tea noted down. So this kind of tea thing starts up, and coffee houses were really for the men. It was for business, and the aristocratic men would go, and the women were absolutely not allowed. How very dare we? So there was a chap that turned up in the early 1700s to kind of change that a little bit, a chap called Thomas Twining. And you might know the name Twining for the Twinings tea brand, which still exists. And he decided that all of these different coffee houses, they had a kind of a USP, something that was unique that would make people go to that coffee house. And he decided that he was going to do a tea house. So he was going to start selling cups of tea, and you could go, and that was his USP. So that's what he did. On the Strand in London, he set up a shop where you could go and have cups of tea. But the thing is, it became slightly popular with the ladies. Now, ladies, what they were trying to do is they weren't really allowed to kind of go to these shops. So they were pulling up in their carriages in front of Twining's tea shop and then getting their footmen or their servants to run in and get them tea. And then they were having their sort of afternoon tea back at their homes. And it became this thing. And Thomas Twining eventually ended up selling much more dry tea than, I don't know if you call it cooked tea, wet tea, than tea in cups, let's say. And so he kind of lent into that, really. And at one point in time, he was selling, and this will give you an idea of how expensive it was, 100 grams of tea for the equivalent of about £160 in today's money, which is outrageous. I mean, I like tea, but come on, there's a limit. But Twinings is still there. It's a shop that's still on the Strand. It's been there for over 300 years. They still sell tea. Actually, I have a little picture of that too, which I can show you. Where's it gone? No, I don't have a picture of it. It's not there. But anyway, it is a lovely little shop. Really kind of thin, sweet shop. And you can still kind of go and visit it today. It's really rather lovely. And then, of course, I'm sure you're all aware, well, I mean, we're doing it right now. We're having kind of afternoon tea break. So this thing of afternoon tea, which is a very British thing, sort of comes in, tea had been being drunk, but in about the 1840s. And the lady who sort of started out afternoon tea, of course it's a lady because it's a very nice, genteel thing to do, was a lady called the Duchess of Bedford. Now, in the 1800s, we're talking kind of end of the Georgian period, going into the Victorian period, but this whole era of everything's got to be fashionable. You've got to do it the right way. If you sort of think about Jane Austen and all that kind of time, it's all about knowing that you're doing the right thing, you look the right way, you're acting the right way. So what was fashionable was eating dinner quite late, at sort of 8 or 9 o'clock. And the Duchess of Bedford had a bit of a conundrum because she found that mid-afternoon she was getting terribly hungry between her lunch and her dinner. So she started to request a pot of tea and some sandwiches or bread and butter and some cakes to be delivered to her room as a sort of little, bit in between meals. And then it became a thing. She would invite her friends and they would come and they'd all get dressed up. And afternoon tea kind of became more elaborate into this thing of, what we do now of tea and tiered cakes and scones and sandwiches, and if you're feeling very fancy, a glass of champagne. And Queen Victoria is said to have, in fact, let me show you a little picture of the Duchess of Bedford doing her thing. Here she is, looking particularly fancy and drinking tea alone on that occasion, but there we go. So that is the Duchess of Bedford. And so when you get to her starting to invite people, she invites Queen Victoria, and here is Queen Victoria in her later years. I'm sure you're probably fairly well acquainted with good old Queen Vic. Queen Victoria was invited to this and kind of liked it and